Welcome to The Line. CNN is responsible for the reporting on the destroyed rape kits. The network looked at a couple of dozen law enforcement agencies across the U.S. and found police destroyed at least 400 rape kits before the statutes of limitations expired or when there wasn't a time limit to prosecute. Included in the investigation were the Farmington Police Department, which according to the report destroyed 14 rape kits. In addition, CNN reported 22 destroyed kits in Las Cruces and one here in Albuquerque. Here to discuss this investigation and the local response to it are this week's Line Opinion panelists. I'm joined at the table by Daniel Foley, former State House Minority Whip. Merritt Allen is with us. She's the owner and executive director of Vox Optima LLC. Sophie Martin, she's an attorney here in Albuquerque and one of our regulars. And Adrian Carver, executive director of Equality New Mexico. Thank you all for being here. Merritt, we seem to be making some progress in this area with legislators passing bills last year to require the Department of Public Safety to assist local crime labs with the backlog and requiring new rape kits to be submitted to those labs within 30 days of receipt. But clearly, we still have a long way to go. What's your thought about this whole thing?
Well, we also saw a tremendous backlog.
Yes.
And that is mostly taking place in Albuquerque. We have the largest backlog. I think it's an issue we've talked about on the show before, law enforcement being under-resourced, particularly when you get outside the Albuquerque metro area, Santa Fe. Farmington is a very small police department.
Right.
And it's a challenge, and it can be a training issue, it could be a financial issue, it could be a malfeasance issue. We don't know enough to point to an issue. I don't know that legislating and more laws are necessary. I think we just kind of need to follow our own procedures competently. I don't know that we need legislation to do that, but we certainly need competent administration of law enforcement agencies.
Right, right. So if we pick up on that, the training thing Merritt just mentioned just rang like a bell for me. It just seems like there's something has to be a separate approach here.
There's something procedural, but I think beyond that, there is a burgeoning understanding that these rape kits are valuable not just as, as a community we seek justice for victims of individual crimes, but also as we seek to find patterns.
Right.
I mean, I'm reminded right now of the gentleman in prison in Texas who just admitted to 70+ serial killings.
That's right.
And
including here in Albuquerque.
Including here in Albuquerque. And I think as our technology becomes more sophisticated, of course we're saying, we need to hold on to that information because it may not just be this one case. And so when an officer or a department says, yeah, we didn't get anywhere with that and so we destroyed it, or the victim didn't return my calls, whatever excuse is given for the destruction of evidence, especially while the case is still live, meaning that their statute of limitations is still open, there's no statute of limitations, that is particularly inexcusable. But I think beyond that, there's merit in holding on to these cases, processing the cases, because obviously if it's just sitting on a shelf, it does no good for anyone, and using the technology that we now have to do a better job of tracking crime. It has to be said, in particular crime against women. I mean, one of the things that really concerns me about this story is what appears to be, in some cases, a really cavalier attitude in some departments about crimes against women.
Adrian, picking up on what Sophie just said too, I have to imagine the era of we don't have enough physical room to hold these kits are now over. That excuse cannot hold anymore. And just one excuse after another has to be knocked down here is what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think we have to treat sexual violence just as seriously as other violent crimes and treat these crimes just as we would, serial robberies or other violent crimes. And we just across the board need to stop destroying these kits, even after, I'm one of the people that even after the statute of limitations, I think for the reasons that Sophie mentioned, to find patterns, and our technology is developing every year, and so we need to be able to hold on to those. But I'd also like to see our departments. I used to serve on what's called the Intimate Partner Violent Death Review Team, and that's a group of advocates, officers, department folks, folks in the government. It's a cross-sector team that reviews all of the cases, and so I would like to see us establish some sort of team that will come together and review what's being done with each of these kits, and to ensure that we're keeping a backlog we are eliminating the backlog, but we're testing all of these kits, and we're finding out what's happening with each one of these cases, because each one of these kits represents a person, and we have to take that seriously.
And if I could jump in,
Interesting
it sort of occurred to me as I was saying this, we need to remember as well that this is not just crimes against women,
Right.
that men are victims of sexual assault as well, and especially in cases of male-on-male sexual assault, there can be a tendency to sort of dismiss it, and that can't happen. Those cases also have to be treated with great care and great
I
respect.
appreciate you saying that too. It is complicated. You know, Dan, I can't help thinking, reading over the CNN story, the re-victimization for these women, as Adrienne mentioned, these kits represent someone. And some of these stories were so heinous, and the idea that a sheriff could just say, well, you know what, I asked them to call me within 10 days, no one called me, so therefore this thing is gone. It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. I couldn't imagine how these women feel after something like that. It's incredible.
Well, you got to remember, you're asking folks that, some of these folks are elected, and we know what the people give us sometimes in elected officials. So, it's not always the best and the brightest that rise to these elected positions. Right. I'm just still can't wrap my hands around that these kits are sitting on the shelf somewhere. I mean, you can set up, my wife can dab my cheek and send it to Ancestry.com, and they find every relative I've ever thought of having in my life in the last 50 years in 20 days. I also know there's a national database with all this stuff. It's this is how ignorant I was. I thought you would establish these rape kits, and the first thing you did was send that stuff to the national database and say, let's run it against anybody that could have done this. And so I still can't, to your point, you said, I don't know if not having space is an answer. I don't know why you're even keeping these things. It seems to me between state databases, local databases, federal databases, international databases, there's enough information, enough places to store this stuff that if all this stuff went to them right away, I can't imagine that, we'd catch more of these criminals. But to find out that, through all over the country, these things are happening and people are storing them in a tough shed out back until they decide to empty it, it's interesting. We're all sitting around here with iPads and phones, most of us. We got everybody sitting around here with all this technology, and here we're having this conversation about people basically cleaning out their garage 3 or 4 times a year and saying, well, this person didn't call me back, this case isn't going anywhere, this guy got convicted. I just can't, I'm not in the law enforcement realm. I can't imagine convicting someone of rape and putting that person in prison, or a violent sexual crime, putting that person in prison and then saying, well, all the evidence we have to put that guy on, let's just toss it, because I guess it only happens in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Right.
There's no chance that this drifter who passed through committed a crime somewhere else. So.
And I think to your point as well, we've seen the technology improve so dramatically. So 30 years ago, you might have said, like, we got a blood type and that's as far as we can go. But now we know the advances that have been made in technology, and we can conceive of future advances. That's right. And so, when we hear these stories about the California serial killer who was found through a DNA website because family members, there are some privacy issues and all of that, certainly, but at this point I question whether any kit should be destroyed.
There's a program out there.
With limitations, obviously. If you've reason to believe, like, nobody lives to 120.
Well, there's a program out there right now that I was reading about the other day that you can send this DNA stuff to, and based on all the characteristics, they can build a person.
Right.
And say, this is kind of what the person's going to look like. Now, it may not look exactly like you, but it's going to have the shape of the forehead, the color of the eyes.
There are definitely privacy concerns, I feel like I need to say, but we balance those. We balance.
And I think what's really important to say, it's a very sad thing, but I'm pretty sure in New Mexico, someone has been assaulted this week.
Right.
And we have this story that
during the show.
Yeah, we're basically all this coverage saying, yeah, you're probably not going to get tested in time, and there's a backlog. So good luck getting that prosecuted. So I just want to say to the victim advocates who work with law enforcement around the state, please step up.
That's right.
Please step up and get victims the voice.
Let me finish with Adrienne and something you mentioned earlier. There were 2 pieces of legislation last year that did not pass. The one was that would require biennial inventory reports of rape kits, and another that would ensure sexual assault survivors are notified about the rape kit status And the results have created momentum for them. You see what I mean? The legislature's got to step up this year, it seems to me. This is...
Look, the legislature and the governor's office need to step up in general this
Right.
year. There's a lot of expectations. There's over a generation of expectations for this legislature and this governor, and this is one of many things that need to happen. I think making sure that survivors are notified of what's happening with
right.
their kids
That's right.
empowers them, and
That's right.
incredibly
It's a
important.
reasonable expectation, it would seem to
Absolutely.
me.
I think
So-
it's also a safety issue.
That's right.
Frankly.
Exactly right.
Well, it can be used as an accountability issue as well. I mean, if people know that there's going to be someone knocking on the door saying, you didn't notify me, I think, it's easy for us as a former legislator, it's easy for us here at the table to cast aspersions on, hey, here's the name of the bill. Sometimes the devil's in the details. I mean, these bills come out and say,
Fair
well,
enough.
you will tell everybody, and people say, well, hold on.
Right.
Maybe some people don't want to know.
There are
So-
issues that Sophie brought
Right.
up,
So, I
privacy
mean,
issues. That's right.
I think
There are things to be
I
hashed
kind
out.
of agree with Merritt when she said, I'm not sure the answer is more laws, because I think we have plenty of opportunities. I think it's getting everybody together and saying, get us the information, let's work together, and let's get this information to best serve the citizens.
Good point there. We'll have to wrap that discussion. There is much more to say on this story, though. Next week on the show, we sit down with a representative for the New Mexico Coalition of Sexual Assault Programs for an update on the state's rape kits and this latest CNN investigation. Be sure to tune in for that important interview. Still to come on the line, former Congressman Steve Pearce faces a new battle in the race to lead the state Republican Party into the future. We'll talk about why there's a divide amongst the party faithful.